I'm just
Pickles. Pass up a nice.
I'll try not to. Yeah, I'll be kind of.
I'm bringing in some treats from my one so I know you don't always need to get over to the faculty, so I'll bring in a
So your parents must have been so happy to have you around.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Happy New Year. How is it going? You're storming in?
Yes, that's right. Transitioning from one to the other. That's right.
Take a deep breath. You still have sandwiches? They're just so nice. Wow.
Really, it's small.
Yes. I'm really looking forward to this. Tomorrow. Yes. Yes.
Oh, I mean, it's painting.
So I think we are getting a short version. It's good for us to know too, what the girls will experience tomorrow. But we have to I told you guys. Yeah.
Our oldest one, she works in the store. And one day we and so she goes,
I don't I'm just and you know, he wants to move really close.
Really? You're rough crowd.
But they're all.
Yeah.
They're also
I did. And then I just caught this big cross. This is really
I ended up freaking out in front of them. Like visitor's presentation was a little earlier. Was it crazy out there now? Yeah. How is it? I feel like it's your second time around. Did you know what to do, right?
You know, this is hard.
It's hard.
Like you said, I don't think come home.
Please make it stop.
Fetch up. Yeah. Really good, right? Oh my God.
Welcome. brain spot. I think I
Sorry about that. I keep wondering if she's gonna waiver her one, you know, so far she's got good acceptances. I said, I think she likes it. Look at me. Just, I don't want to confuse you, but I just want to make sure you're set, you know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it could change as the time goes. That's where we are right now.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, it wasn't so nice to see somebody here. Actually, hold on.
Hi everyone, I'm Kate Taylor, for those of you who don't know me. I'm Director of the Raisin Center for Global Justice, and I'm really excited tonight to introduce to you Courtney from the Respect Institute. She is the CEO and co-founder of the Institute, began work more than 10 years ago, and she is coming to us today from much warmer climates in San Jose, where she lives with her husband and son. I had to write this down because there's so many awards that she's been recognized with. Her mission is to make respect for all status quo, and she's been featured by CNN, ABC, NPR, USA Today, Teen Vogue, and been used as a resource by the White House and the Clinton Global Initiative. She was a top 5 national finalist for the American Express NGen Leadership Award and was named one of the 42 leading women in education by the University of Southern California. She's also a local hero award winner by Cosmopolitan for Latinas, and she's a co-author of the best-selling book, Respect. So we'll hear from her tonight, and then she's going to present to faculty and staff tomorrow and all of your students tomorrow afternoon for our all-school rally. So join me in welcoming her, and we're excited to have you.
Thanks so much. After the holiday and New Year's and dropping off girls, I'm sure, that you stayed for this. I feel very honored. Figure out this guy. Oh, yay. The technology team here is pretty awesome. What we're going to kind of go over tonight, the word respect, everyone, I think that we all have our own definition of that, and that's a little bit of what we'll talk about. But there's some great research that we have that really, all of our work now applies to both young men and young women, but the work started with girls. So we have a little bit more insight into girls at this point, and being a former girl is helpful. But one of the biggest things in our work that we did was distinguish the difference between self-esteem and self-respect. And it's very helpful in influencing girls, and then as ourselves, if you are a woman, but also for men. It's a asset that belongs to all of us. So it's super helpful to know those differences and where you kind of where you're going to get the best bang for your buck in adolescent development. I'm also going to give you this really great tool. I hope you love it. Called Respect Basics Coaching, and it's a quick tool you can use with your children. We use it with kids as young as 10, up to age 24, because we also work with young adults who are doing like their education recovery processes, whether they're in a juvenile facility or didn't graduate and are recovering their credits, things like that. But it's a great process to use around helping them generate their own solutions, their own boundaries, their own goals. I think it's so hard to sit back for us in the driver. We want to be in the driver's seat sometimes because we kind of know some stuff. We've been through some stuff maybe, and we want to be helpful. And it's a way that we found when we give it to adults and teachers that it helps you become a stronger resource. So like you find them coming to you more as a trusted resource, and that can kind of help close that gap sometimes. And then we'll have time for a short Q&A. We kind of looked at some of the hot topics, and we did a survey, not only of the staff here, but just stuff that we look at nationally of what's going on right now. And obviously, consent and sexual harassment, these are big topics. We're in like a pretty big moment of conversation about this right now, and I'm sure the girls are going to be talking about it already. And also things like frenemies and toxic stress, which is a big thing that we research. So all of our work is based on research. So we're a research-based body. So I want to give you a little bit you gave me the kind of fancy introduction, but I wanted to share a little bit about what organically brought me to this work and this kind of research. I actually started in journalism, so I was a journalist for over a decade, and at the end of my career as an investigative journalist, and I focused mostly on girls and women topics and content at a girls and women media company. And two things kind of happened there. One was, so this is going to age me now, but this was the sort of beginning of the, the big commercial internet. And we just saw girls, on our message boards and, giving each other really kind of dangerous advice and also reporting a lot of the stuff that's coming out right now about consent and sexual harassment. We felt like, I started to become curious of, what makes a difference of a girl who gets to womanhood with less trauma, less violation, more power. Like, what is the real differentiator here? And then looking at the intersectionality of everything that goes on in our society, from race to class to, geography, and kind of looking at that. And then also, but really at the heart of it was my parents, ta-da, 70s. It's back, yeah. So they had the most 70s, I think they get the most 70s award for their wedding. I can't get over it. I still have the coat and the blouse. Because we don't have the wedding dress, we have the 70s blouse. So, but they, when we were growing up in our house, unfortunately, we had basically, it was opposite land when it came to the lessons of respect. So, my parents both grew up in very trying circumstances themselves, and they were obviously a mixed race couple, which brought its own interesting things into their life as far as feedback and treatment. But my dad, by the time he was 19, he went to federal prison in California, San Quentin. It's a pretty famous prison. And my mom was a teen mom with my older brothers, and so, not that there's anything wrong with that, but for her, it meant the end of her education. I mean, 11th grade, that was it. So they brought to the family their lessons from their families, so that was a lot of violence, a lot of addiction, a lot of, we were in and out of poverty, things like that. And so when I started to kind of do my journalism career and become interested in these issues around girls, their background came into it for me, because I used to think when I was younger, we're just a messed up family, and then as I started to research, I saw there's actually inputs that went into that, that went into the systems we were in, the systems they were in. Now we know a lot about how trauma passes through the cells. It's like, wow, I was in trauma when my mom was pregnant with me. So looking at all that made me curious about, behavior. And I think it kind of, the number one thing I noticed was, and this probably doesn't apply to your girls, but this is just to give background, was just the question of, is it disrespect or is it trauma? Especially when we look at behavior. And I think we need to make those distinctions. We work in a lot of environments with a lot of at-risk youth, and then we also work with youth that are not typically at risk, but the themes are kind of the same, because like as we're seeing in society now, a lot of women in pretty amazing jobs and amazing environments were experiencing very systematic, scary disrespect. So a big part of the work at the Respect Institute. So I wrote this book for girls called Respect, and it's all about, it's like a self-help book for girls 11 to 17, and it was about how do you respect yourself and get and give respect in relationships. That seemed to be kind of the hot topics, and then kind of caps off, which is some of the things the girls will experience tomorrow with what's my leadership agenda personally. How do I integrate this? I mean, if you think about it, if we had your young women running Uber or running, these would be different climates, and so I'm excited for them I can't wait for them to start taking over these places, because some of it I feel like just needs to come from a new way of thinking, right? And one of the things that is kind of fun about this work is we used the word respect, I will be honest, for like 3 or 4 years, and we didn't have a body of research that was actually defining it. And so this woman named Dr. Nancy Nimmey. She actually teaches at Yale now. She was at University of New Haven. She did a whole bunch of research to figure out what does self-respect really mean. And what was neat was we found that self-esteem, which has been this big movement, lots of investment in self-esteem, lots of self-esteem content. Self-esteem comes from the world of psychology. That's where it was defined and teased out. Self-respect comes from the philosophers, which I think is really cool. And at its root meaning, the word actually means, so like rewind. We all know what audio cassettes are, the girls don't. But like rewind, and then spect, like spectacles, usually I wear glasses, like respect. It actually means to look again. So it's really more seated in compassion and justice. Now, I have a grandma who just turned 100 years old. She's from Mexico. That is not her definition of respect, okay? Her definition of respect is, mija, I'm the oldest, and the respect all comes here, and I'll decide how it gets disseminated out here. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just, you know, this is what the word actually means, so we can incorporate that. And then the big difference that we found between self-respect and self-esteem is self-respect is defined as knowing you're a unique contributor to the greater whole. Knowing that. And that's also more based in equity. So it has nothing really to do with like how I'm feeling about myself every minute of the day, which we'll get into. It's just that knowing. So like I meet 6-year-old girls who know that about them, you know, I'm a unique contributor to the greater whole. So what I'm doing in the classroom, you know, how I'm guiding my friends, all of that. I'm unique and I'm contributing. You know, which way is this contribution going though? Is what we talk about, you know, as a leader. And then this is what we're all kind of going for, is that people with self-respect, and it's not a fixed state of being, right? Which we'll also talk about. But they behave like I matter, you matter. And what's interesting is this had been in our definition years before all this, you know, new reemergence of this word matter became the centerpiece of social justice. You know, Black Lives Matter. And I love that because it does actually fit in with the concept of, yeah, how we want people behaving is like, I matter, you matter. You know, there's equity there. You don't matter more than me. So we're going to do some fun stuff, but just a couple more tidbits. So the big kind of distinction is that respect is defined differently from esteem, from trust. So trust is really, I think a lot of things get mixed up between trust and respect when we're talking. Meaning, like, have you ever said, oh, I really have a lot of respect for her? You know, I think what we mean is I really admire her, or I trust that person. Trust can really go up and down in relationships. As parents, we know this better than anybody. One day you're really high in the trust bucket, you know, based on your accountability, you know, based on you do what you say you'll do, you know, you're not lying to me, you know, then the trust is high. The next day it could go all the way down to 0, right? Based on choices that people make. So that's the difference. So one thing I say in our work that is not always popular with adults, and now that I'm a parent, I get why, because I even want to go back on what I'm saying, is that respect does not have to be earned. That's probably not how any of us were raised, and that might not be our current belief system, and that's okay. But technically, if it means to look again, if it means it looks like I matter, you matter, then it doesn't have to be earned, because if it has to be earned, that gives me a pass to treat you non-human at its worst. And we don't want to take people's humanity off the table. So we say respect is a baseline, but trust, you know, that goes up and down. I mean, you know, admiration, we're not going to like everybody. You know, like I tell my 7-year-old son, you don't have to be friends with everyone, you do have to be friendly. Mm-hmm. You know, you don't get in the way of their life. They don't have to be your favorite person. Everyone in America is not my favorite person. Why would I put that on a kid? They don't have to be friends with everybody. They get to have boundaries, but they can't be mean to people or block their freedom, you know. So admiration is also part of it. And then there's like protocol, and this starts to meld with respect a little bit. So protocol is like, right, like you probably have protocol at the school. You have rituals, you have the things you do to share space, to keep people safe. And protocol really comes up a lot around safety. Like, I had the honor of meeting a couple, like the president and the vice president. You know, there's a protocol to that for safety. You know, I mean, I can't just run up to him and go, hey, Obama, you know, I'll get tackled and I will not be following protocol. And then civility. I think this is the introduction to respect for a lot of us, and especially the little ones, you know. Please, thank you, excuse me. You know, that's showing I matter, you matter. I see you, you matter. I'm not gonna just knock you over when I come to the room. I'm gonna, you know, make room for you. So that's a little bit about where we're coming from. The self-esteem part, which I think, when we break this out for parents, especially those of girls, there's usually like a great sigh of relief, because self-esteem is mostly outside of my control. This is what the research shows. So, it is my opinion of myself, technically, but unfortunately it's all influenced by outside content. So it's my opinion of myself, but the inputs that went into it is the media, which is way bigger of an impact, right, than when we were younger. The education system, actually, so, you know, your girls are in this environment that is holding their worth and helping them aspire to leadership. But a lot of children are in education systems that are not giving them good input about who they are and the opinion of them. There's a lot of bias, you know, there's a lot of things that go on. Family, we all know we come from families. They influence your opinion about yourself. Your peers, right, when you get into adolescence, huge. It starts to wipe out our influence as families, which is really tough. And then, you know, for many groups, historical treatment and rights of that group, right? So like, you know, part of my family is Latino, you know, they've been in California before it was California, or Arizona actually, but like they weren't seen as true Americans and all this stuff forever, right? So that's going to influence their opinion of themselves. And self-esteem is very malleable. So it's like one day I'm up, the next day I'm down, you know. And so what we say is like, you just don't want that to be your engine. Actually, we all have it. I think the biggest distinction is like, I usually tell this story at the beginning of these sessions, but I didn't want to be too dark because we only have an hour. But about my family growing up and the domestic violence, and there's this, I do this visual of like holding up my arms, and if I'm having a self-esteem moment, one time I was preparing, you know, I looked down on my arm and I was like, oh my God, I need to start working out. This is, you know, flabby, or, you know, I start thinking about my body image. The self-respect moment's like, oh, but this talks for 500 people and hopefully I can help somebody out. Unique contributor to greater whole. Just different perspective. The other bummer, which you've seen in your society, I think, there's studies now about that bullies have high self-esteem. So there's this kind of myth that bullies have low self-esteem and therefore taking it out on other people. Now, I'm not saying that bullies have true, healthy, high self-esteem, the one with high self-esteem, but there's a scale called Rosenberg, and a lot of bullies will score high on it. They do have a high opinion of themselves, and they do things to maintain their social status. And you can be left on the cutting room floor. In that scenario, if that's where the self-esteem is coming from, you could end up being around a very harmful person. You've probably seen this. I mean, adults I talk to see it a lot in the workplace. Not Westover, of course. But, you know, like they see, wow, that person is really confident, really this, really that, and they're kind of nasty to everybody, you know? And it's like, but they would test high, perhaps, for high self-esteem.
Reminds me of our president, I'm sorry.
I wasn't gonna say it. Before this happened, and really non-political, but before this happened, I actually used his personality as an example of that. Before he was ever into this whole politics thing, he was a perfect example of that. Now that's, you know, there's probably other stuff going on there, but teenagers, you know, UC Davis did a study and they found that to us it's probably like no duh, but they were like, popular kids bully too, or, you know, it was like, really? You know, yeah, I think we know that, you know, but the point was the source of it was that social capital. So I don't know if you've seen any of that. So that's the self-esteem just comes with all these kind of bad aftertastes, you know, that we don't really need. Self-respect, what's cool about it, it's just coming from a totally different space. So it's your actions despite your circumstances. So you don't get to really blame circumstances. You get to say, I'm a unique contributor to greater whole. My behavior is starting to line up with that. I brush my teeth. That's a good start. You know, I take a shower. I be where I'm supposed to be when I say I'm going to be there. I show up for people. I know that, you know, I'm the person who plays trumpet here and that's the guy who plays drums. You know, I know where I fit here and with my uniqueness. It's really about daily practices that show to self I matter. You don't really need to get the affirmation so much back. It's helpful and we'll talk about that. But people that are doing all this stuff, they have more capacity to treat other people like they matter. You know, it's kind of like that gas tank. When our gas tank's low, I don't know about you, I'm definitely not a perfect parent. So right, when my gas tank is low, which is like some point of every day I hit it, what goes first? Patience. Because patience and compassion are two little friends that go together. And I just start to lose that patience, right? It's like, there's not a human there, there's just a person who's bugging me who won't put their shoes on, or, you know, whatever's going on. So that takes a lot to keep that up, you know. And a lot of us, if you're coming from where you've had multiple generations who are not even at zero yet, you know, with the gas tank, I mean, that's a lot that gets carried forward. So that's the whole self-respect versus self-esteem. But the bottom line is that even though I'm saying, okay, it comes from within, it's not circumstantial, it's generated by this accumulation of my actions, the research shows, though, it's not just this little isolated thing. So it has to be fostered in a supportive environment, like a family, like a school, that's reinforcing that idea. You matter. So like we work with a lot of schools, for example, that have like high suspension and expulsion rates. That is setting this message. You don't matter, bye. And so it's not a surprise that our kids who get suspended and expelled are 3 times more likely to enter the justice system. Because I'm gonna get feedback from somewhere, I'm gonna get busy somewhere. You know, if I'm not getting busy at your school, I'm gonna get busy somewhere else. And so it's not, you know, the biggest thing those schools can do is start to be restorative and be inclusive and just not push kids out to the best of their ability. A lot of kids get pushed out for very silly things, not violence, you know. So what do you think about that? What do you think about, let's do a little popcorn, the differences between self-respect and self-esteem and this definition of respect that's saying something a little different than some of us have learned? A little cheat sheet, we'll use this later. This has the definitions on it. Thank you. Who will share? Thank you.
I think it's very helpful especially for adolescent girls who are navigating their own sense of self and values and might like themselves but not always get the support of, right? Friends can be very transitional at this age, and starting in middle school, I mean, you're changing classes, you're changing majors, you're changing interests, you go off to college, all of that is very transitional, and so you don't have kind of this stable social ground. You constantly have to remake yourself in some ways for friends and define yourself as well. So I think this really delineates that in many ways, that you can respect yourself and be clear with what you feel is yourself, but then also you're going to have bad days where you feel like, gosh, I feel like I don't matter, but it really, this helps to say, wait, I do matter. It's actually that these outside influences are influencing my self-esteem, not my self-respect. And I think that can be helpful for girls and for all.
And what we don't have on the chart that you're actually making me think of, we need to update our graphic, is another thing that inputs into self-esteem is chemistry, is biochemistry. So it's like not only the female special times that we have, but also just, you know, what did I eat? Oh, my serotonin's down right now. I hate myself. You know, it's like, okay, that's a thought, but I'm a unique contributor to the whole, so I'm going to go to soccer practice anyway. You know, I mean, that's where you start to see the action. I'm going to go do that thing anyway. That's my life. That's making me into me. And And girls, another big thing that helps them with this self-respect versus self-esteem aspect is service. So they see when they're of service, and there's a lot of studies about eating disorders that back this up, that young women who are in eating disorder recovery go the distance, have lasting recovery if they're mentoring younger women who are like in their program, whatever their program is, if it's a, just a little support group, if it's an outpatient, in an environment, not just mentoring them online or whatever. But that service piece shows you matter. It's like you showed up for someone. It's not about you today. You showed up for someone else, and wow, you made a difference. And you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be president of the United States. You just needed to be you in your truth, showing up for that one. And suddenly, your thighs feeling fat is just not on the table. It really gets you out of that. Adolescence is like this exercise in me. It's just, you're in that level one. Everyone's looking at me, and it's like, they're not, as adults, we start to realize like nobody cares that you're here actually. So you have to like make yourself notice, especially as you get older as a woman, you're like, I'm invisible, and so I think, that is something great for them to start to delineate. What makes me feel really genuinely, I don't want to say happy, not like a big happiness person, but what makes me feel genuinely like vital, alive. And service is like a really quick way to get there. Whatever your deal is, being helpful. Yeah. So that's another way that we kind of, self-esteem, will you, now this is something that goes on now, right? Like, will you then post on Facebook, oh, I just fed 5,000 homeless people, I'm so awesome, and people are like, yeah, you're the best, that's getting into self-esteem land. You're kind of over the action of it. What else? What did you notice in that? What do you want to take away? What are you not so sure about? What comes up for you?
I guess with all the outside distractions and with devices and everything, these kids are on 24/7. How, using that as a positive and a negative.
Yeah.
Like how you've been able to incorporate that.
Yeah, that is such a, and it's so crazy because that shift happened like during this work. Even though we did the book because of what girls were writing on message boards. That seems like the rotary dial phone to me now, compared to them all having a computer in their pocket. And there's really no way for us to control what the heck they're doing. So I think part of it is, and this is where adults I think do play a pivotal role, is always helping them figure out is their online self congruent with their offline self? And holding accountability for both spaces, because that's what happens to us at work. If I send you an email that's really inflammatory, well, now we're really gonna get busted because everyone's like watching now, but let's say in a perfect world, if I'm disrespectful or violate company policy towards you, I'm gonna be held accountable for that. And so I think accountability, because there are studies, right, that show that empathy online is a big empathy killer. And that's problematic for a lot of the things that we want for our children. We want the empathy chip to be very sensitive, not totally shut down. So I think that's part of it, is just saying, you're in a relationship with me. I provide the devices for now. And I'm a big fan of, even if they are paying their own stuff, you're still providing the device. You're allowing the device into life. This might not be popular with the girls, but this is something I do bring from my childhood, where my mom was like, I am the arbiter of all of these things. So even if you're paying for it, it's still a privilege to use it in my house, in my presence, while we're DNA connected, okay? So I think that is helpful to say, this is my expectation, and help them navigate when something goes awry. Like when they do have that friend, the frenemy thing, I thought she was my friend and she said something, people use sarcasm to be, I'm like, sarcasm is a form of violence. In nonviolent communication, sarcasm is like the death by any cuts, So I think if you help them navigate when stuff like that happens, but also encouraging, and this is where we do have to kind of stay hip a little bit, like, what is a way the device is enabling self-care and service? like I use my device to enable a lot of self-care things, so it's helpful to me right now. And I have rules for myself, you know, I don't, like a lot of people, I don't look at it first thing in the morning, I don't, you know, I do things to maintain my self-care. So, but it's a process, because they're, what do they call them, digital natives, you know, I mean, I had a 6-year-old on the plane who I didn't know look at my phone and be like, I can write my signature on your phone. I mean, she just like knew, she could have totally like stole my identity. I mean, she just took it, you know. So I was like a little afraid of her, you know. I was like, she just grew up with this in her hand, you know. So I think that's part of it. But I think just sort of sending this message that it feels like these are separate identities, they are not. And so how do you want to show up in the world? That should be congruent. And helping them notice when they don't feel good, you know, like when they're doing all the filters on their photos, or they're doing all this stuff that's like, this is not the real me, actually. And that's self-esteem land, so we don't want to put our money in that bank, because it wears out. You know, it's like, well, today I was pretty and in style, and tomorrow I'm not, you know. But am I still showing up to soccer practice? Am I still, you know, student council president? Am I still the only person in the school who loves biology? You know, whatever my thing is, you know. I think in these environments, it's actually, they're so ripe to make that shift to really letting self-respect be the engine versus self-esteem, because they're not, you know, that's what, at least in my experience of single-sex education, that's a big bonus of it, is getting to be more authentic, you know. And I've worked with a lot of single-sex schools, and it's something we all have in common, is a higher authenticity quota, you know. Anything else before we move on about the definitions?
I think what I'm getting out of this is, what's beautiful is the pure simplicity of it. Things are so crazy now for my girls, I think our children, in this world, hyper speed. So I love that the concrete definition of it is so simple. And so therefore, hopefully the practice will be authentic and could be relatively simple, basic.
And I really have not met a lot of people, I've not really met anyone personally, I mean, I have people I make up stuff about that are in the media, but that doesn't want to live in an I matter, we matter world. That's not really deep down the aspiration, you know. I think we want that, we don't always know how to get there, and we don't always know our biases, and I think this helps girls see that too, because really to look again means, you know, there's a lot of stuff, like when you go into the land of trauma, or you go into the land of neurodiversity, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's happening in our brain, that our brain is on its own little cruise in life, you know. And we're gonna have automatic reactions to things. We are gonna automatically stereotype. That's our dinosaur brain trying to make us safe. It does that kind of stuff. But self-respect is like frontal lobe stuff. It's like, well, then I'm gonna choose. I'm gonna get into choice now. This is what differentiates me from a panda bear, you know, and I'm gonna decide to look again and to get to know you and ask you one more question, you know, and that's why the practices that we do, they really unlock a lot of empathy, which is a great counterbalance for a lot of the stuff that they're going through and that we're going through. I mean, look at our country. It's this crazy, mega divided whatever's happening, right? Empathy's like left the building. So this is helpful. So what we did was we developed, they're called the Respect Basics. They look like cute little bumper stickers, but behind each of them, these are all practices. And the reason they're in a circle is it's not a linear process. So for like those of you who are familiar with like the 12 steps of AA, you know, like they go in an order, that's why they're called 1 through 12, right? But this is linear, so non-linear. So if you want to, you know, boost your self-respect, the place that we tell them to look first is look at the one you're strongest at, which we'll do, that you just know, like, I do that all day long, I was born that way, great. That's in the asset category. And then you look at the one that you're weakest at. And that's where you can practice more. But you could have the same problem and pick anyone out of a hat, and there's a way to apply it. And they benefit other people, but they're not focused on other people just yet. So what we found in the research was, it's a lot of, as adults, right, we want to we want to fast forward to mutual respect. Especially because we did everything in the world for them, and now they talk to us like this, and so it's like, really? And I mean, I remember my mom used to say to me, like, I'm not a dog and this is not a hotel. And it was like, I totally get what she means by that now, because it's that idea that, we want to get to that space of, please, can we have the mutual respect? But they need to build up this muscle of the self-respect to really get it, what the I matter, you matter is going to look like. Does that ring true? So these are the respect basics. And so what we say is, you do, and then you be. And the being comes out of it. Otherwise, this is just a postcard, right? So I'll have you now share with a partner, sharing time, don't leave anyone out. Person next to you is probably just great. And you want to just look at, you have it on the front of your card. Just share briefly, just off the top of your head, what one are you strongest at right now today, and what one do you know you're kind of weakest at right now today, okay? And these are as defined by you, okay?
Strongest at my best, not bad, no, it's my weakest trust. Yes. Sometimes I don't know what I'm doing.
I would say this.
Well, I guess the strongest at getting involved is like take you as yeah, right. Activities of
Oh my God.
It's hard to say. Anybody saying no, realize that's important to them. That's good. Almost compassion.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
I know,
That's great.
Be yourself. I'm not trying to do something.
I guess.
I don't say like telling my
Yeah, she would never be in a flight. That wasn't fun.
It was fun. She said I was
Right. Did each person get to share? Okay, good, good. We've been having a lot of controversy at the Respect Institute about following your passions. Because there's a lot of research coming out now. I know it's been kind of co-opted in a lot of ways, but youth still like it. They're still optimistic, so we don't want to take away from
I think
that.
that's probably, especially for women, one of the hardest ones. Because eventually we are all being pushed into a certain direction.
Yes. And we have a bonus basic now that's not on here, but that's part of our toolkit. So part of what will happen tomorrow is the girls and staff will go through what we call a respect rally. It's kind of like an intensive workshop, 2 hours, where they're doing a lot of practices in circles. And then there's a toolkit that we have after that has like 400 lessons in it, but you can use them in different ways with different roadmaps. And the back of the kit is all about being of service and like a 7-step process. Now they already do stuff like that here. You guys do service learning, right? But a lot of the places we work, that's a kind of a new concept. So it's a really great process. So what did you share with your partner? So your strongest and your weakest. Who will share? Yes.
I said my weakest was know you're valuable, and my strongest have courage.
So to have courage can help the know you're valuable.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah.
with know you're valuable, I think it's that I mostly have to convince myself that I am, instead of trying to have somebody else tell me that.
Yeah, and that's the self-respect versus self-esteem thing, right?
Yeah.
So like if in self-esteem land, if we all just blanketed you with affirmations, not that that isn't lovely and doesn't help. For some people that's their love language, if you follow all that, you know, the affirmation thing. But if you inside saw, and sometimes I say, don't feel it, see it. You know, take inventory of your worthiness, you know, like just like we would our little bank account, or like I remember my mom turning 60 something. She wasn't in the Medicare age yet, and she worked her whole life, raised us 4 kids, did everything, you know, and luckily was retiring with something, but she didn't have insurance yet, and so she would have to buy private insurance, and she has a chronic illness, and she wasn't going to buy the insurance, and I was like, we insure things that are valuable. You know, we have home insurance, we have car insurance, we insure things that are valuable. Come on, lady, you need this insurance. It's not about the money, it's about what you're saying by not getting it. Like, you're not worth it, literally. And you are. Hello, it's your health, you know? But so I think, you know, just kind of taking inventory when you see like, and sometimes it's vulnerable, and it is a little combination of asking, you know, if you're vulnerable with someone, like I do ask my husband, like we have little, I don't know, after you've been married a long time, you have to just orchestrate a lot of situations. You know, I mean, it's like, I mean, this is what I believe. Just do it. Don't, it's not going to be spontaneous, right? So it's like, I'll say, tell me 3 nice things, please. You know, just because you've heard all the other stuff, and the child's, you know, told you you're a bad mom, whatever's happening. So tell me 3 nice things, and then one can't be you're very nice, or you know, you're very pretty. Like,
Right.
go yeah. But I think, you know, that is just reminding me. It's like I know I'm not basing my whole life on what he's gonna say, but you know, but it is reminding me. It's a little bit of a mirror. I think it's helpful. Who else? What was your strongest and weakest? Yes.
For me, I think setting boundaries has come by a long journey, but to say no, or just because somebody arranged for an event doesn't mean I'm obligated to be there, doesn't mean it fits in my schedule. Just because my kids have decided to do something doesn't mean I have to comply, or that I'm available to drive. Or I've learned to be a little more careful rather than run myself through the mill. The other ones all come up as weaknesses in a lot of cases, because although I can set boundaries, I also don't want to leave anybody uncomfortable. So I might trust my gut, but not always if I think it might affect somebody else. I may not follow my passion if my kids have too much going on this week and I just can't get into the thing that I love to do. So I think all the rest of them are sacrificed by not wanting to make somebody uncomfortable.
And I totally get that. I mean, this is complex. I think, you know, for parents, like our girls are going to get to be in the land of themselves for a little while here, you know, especially at this school. They're investing in themselves and growing. But, you know, sacrifice was the word that was popping in my head as you were talking too, is like sometimes we aren't the front burner, right? Like that concept of having it all. I think a lot of us have dropped that concept. It's what am I having right now? You know, can I be present for that? But I think if you're going to be strong at one, the set boundaries is the powerhouse one to be strong at, because, you know, it allows the other ones, they might be happening even if they're a little diluted, to happen a little bit more strongly. Like, for example, I love, Brene Brown says, the most generous people are also the most boundaried. And I really love that, because I have a value of generosity, but I can't be so generous that I die at 48. You know what I mean? Like that I just wear out myself. It's like it has to be with boundaries. And then the generosity is really real. It's like I could do that, you know. So I love that. You know, I think a lot of the teachers we work with, that's their hardest one, is set boundaries. just everything, you know, because it's like they want to be available for the students all the time. They're such good youth influencers, you know, but the boundaries need to be there for self-care and other things. But I think that that's, but I get the thing about trust your gut and going, and that's a one that the girls struggle with a lot at this age. So what's neat is they're totally tuned into it. I don't meet a lot that don't know what that means and what it means to them. It's the action aligning. And trust your gut doesn't mean just, you know, but it means, you know, doing your values and the decision, doing what's right for you. Trust your gut's kind of slang, you know, for a lot of things. But that's where and when we get into the problem areas, like toxicity things and, you know, consent and all those, that's trust your gut needs to get stronger. You know, and there's activities like that we recommend for them, like mindfulness and things like that. Like, you really got to hear that inner voice that's there, and your gut has just as many, if not more, I think the research shows, neurons than your brain. So there's actually intelligence there. It's trying to tell you stuff, not just that you're hungry for pizza. Who else? Let's get one more. Who hasn't shared? Strongest and your weakest.
Follow your passions was my weakness, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I always want to do what I like to do, but there is no time for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, maybe we interpret this in a different way, but tell your truth, I think that's my strongest. And the way I interpret it is to be myself,
Mm-hmm.
be authentic. And I find it that people respect me more because of that.
That is the intention behind that. You know, when we do it with younger kids, they think it's like, tell the truth, and I think that's a start for them. You know, it's like, yeah, tell the truth. That's warming up for your truth. You know, but it is about authenticity. It's also in all the healing modalities, and everybody has stuff their adversity, right, that they are coming through. Every human. Telling your story, telling your truth is the most effective healing modality. I mean, you're not going to stand all day reciting your memoir, you know, but it is part of it, you know, and that's part of aligning. Well, my gut says I don't want to go. Now I'm going to set the boundary. No, I'm not going to go. And inside of me, it's because it's my truth that I don't drink because I'm an athlete, or, you know, whatever it is. So it's kind of like aligning all of those things together. What I love about young women is they kind of come wired for this a little bit, you know, and that's why when we work with them, it becomes in that relationship space around what is respectful feedback. You know, we don't help our friend by saying, you stupid dummy, don't go da-da-da there. You know, they're like, I'm just telling my truth. It's like, well, listen, you know. We need to, you know, dial up the respect in the you know, work on the delivery. You know, because I think that's a space for them where they can cause conflict is tone. And so learning, you know, what is my tone communicating, and, you know, what tone do I want to have? Be intentional about it. Hey, if you're going to be the world's biggest you know what, then own it and be it for that minute. You better own it then, you know, but don't just be doing it without thinking about it, you know, and causing all these messes. So, yeah, I really love that. And then the get help, this may or may not surprise you, is the hardest one when we're working with our male groups. So, you know, that idea, there's still a really strong stereotype for them often that get help is weakness. It's showing my vulnerability, and I'm not going to do that. And so we, you know, when we're working with young men, that's one that we really work on, is that's actually a sign of resiliency and strength and intelligence, you know. And get help doesn't mean you're always getting help because something bad happened. It's like getting help to build your project, you know, to do your company, to get into that school. You know, we all need a team, and we all need resources and mentors and help, you know. So that's good. All right, so as we're closing out, I just want to share this tool with you that's on your card. So this is called Respect Basics Coaching Method. It even fits on the back of a postcard. It's so simple. And it comes from, you know, I have a certification in this thing called coactive coaching, which is this is where this kind of comes from, which is this belief, and we call it coach and client, but you know, you can do it with anyone, that the coolest thing about it is it just relies on this idea that the other person, I mean, even if they're 10 years old, you know, that they are actually creative, resourceful, and whole. That there's nothing to fix there. They might be inexperienced, they might have no practice at something, they might have challenges or disabilities or things going on, but they're still at the base creative, resourceful, and whole. And that the coaching kind of mindset gets you out of mentoring. Mentoring's a different function, right? So like I have mentors, and I don't know if you guys have had mentors or what your mentors mean to you, but mentors tend to like have something that I want, not like coveting, but you know, like that there's someplace I would like to be, or they have skills that I do not have. And I really do I do want their advice. I want their unsolicited advice, I want their solicited advice. I mean, it's a different dynamic. They're a little bit more revered in the relationship, if you will. Not that we don't have the I matter, you matter, but that, you know, that it's a different, they're giving of themselves freely to kind of be the wise one, right? A coach is different. A coach is an equal. And athletics is probably not a good metaphor, actually, like an athletic coach, because an athletic coach is also like an expert and a mentor. But in this context, they're just giving you space to figure it out yourself. And a lot of what they're going to be doing is biting the tongue and listening, but also moving the conversation forward. And this really helps with young people who are getting into a little bit of, I can't, you know, victim stuff, or I can't stuff, or please do it for me. It gets us out of that too. It's like, no, you're gonna do it for yourself. And it helps them remember their own strategies. And this is what's hard, because as adults, it's like we have like 85 million tested strategies for everything. You know, I mean, we've been in the world a long time doing stuff, staying alive, and we wanna help them with that. But this is the biggest thing that I think is cool about coaching in this way. There's a body of research about the brain that shows that unsolicited advice, not solicited advice, but unsolicited advice, the person who's giving the unsolicited advice, the pleasure center of their brain is lighting up. It feels good. It feels good to be smart and know stuff and give advice. The person who's getting the unsolicited advice, as anyone with a mother-in-law will know, just kidding, the pain center of their brain is lighting up. Because you're literally in pain. And one of the reasons is you feel stupid, you feel inept, you feel opposite of creative, resourceful. So that, you know, and even like, so it's just a distinction, it's just the unsolicited advice, not solicited advice. In coaching, you can give solicited advice. In fact, your advice will be taken more seriously in this kind of structure because it was asked for. So, does that make sense? Does that resonate? Mm-hmm. I'm a recovering unsolicited advice giver myself. I mean, a former journalist, it's like all I did was tell people what to do, you know, and articles and things. And so it was like, it's really hard to let that go. And I even see it with my little 7-year-old. He's like, you know, and he'll tell me, he'll set a boundary with me, he'll be like, just because I'm your son, you don't have to fix everything. You know, like he'll remind me, like, that's not your job, you know? And so, but it becomes really freeing when you get over the hump and folks start solving their own problems and becoming more resourceful. So let's practice this, and this is, you're not gonna be an expert. This is exactly what we do with the girls. Maybe work with your same partner from before. You definitely wanna be in a partner, so if we're an odd man, 2, 4, 6, 8, we have one extra. Maybe one of you guys could sit out. And I will, yeah. Me, so your client is the other person. So raise your hand if you'll be the coach for the first round. Just pick yourself. Okay, perfect. The other person's gonna be the client, you are gonna switch. And you're just gonna follow these steps. So coach is gonna do step 1. You're gonna ask your client to clarify the topic, meaning, client, your only job right now is to think of a real challenge, don't think of a fake challenge. It's challenge by choice, so you're deciding how deep you're gonna go. You know, like, is it a big, you know, Oprah challenge, or is it like something smaller, you know, but be authentic about it, okay? And then the coach is just gonna follow the list of steps. It's gonna be kind of wonky and awkward because you're reading it, but you can do it, okay? So any questions? Are you willing to be coached? Okay. So client, share your challenge.
Would you like to be coached around today?
Based on my New Year's resolution.
So, what impact is this having on you?
So I just call it the change.
Because I like everything.
My challenge is around coaching.
So, what do you want most? What do you want most? Is there anything else you need from this? What makes you so proud of this?
I think really making
So what strengths do you need from making this kind of change?
telling all my stories. Just so that everybody knows.
Choose one practice. What are the ways to practice? What is the next step you can take?
Right, and they basically say, oh, it's okay. So I should be
What are ways that I can support you in help yourself. That sounds like a good it's interesting field, you know. And he liked me too, because it was one like this nice, help him get back that thing insurance side, which he did for 10 years. The next step.
All right, first coach coach, I'll give you like 30 more seconds to try to get through the list. And then we're gonna switch.
All right.
Let's see where the official.
But sometimes the way things are more complicated than that too. It's like if it's better off one day, so you need to know by 2 days from now, make your decision.
All right, I'm gonna stop you there just for time. If you were the coach, who got through the 5 steps? No, that's okay. How far did you get? I mean, I only gave you like 5 minutes. 4's pretty good. One of the reasons, have any of you all heard of like strength-based? Are you getting that out in your parenting or professional world, strength-based everything? But one of the reasons we have number 3 is acknowledging the strengths is that's usually the part in the conversation where people want to give advice. So instead, we're like, okay, put it back over to them. You know, let's not give advice, but let's just remind them they got this. And you cannot know someone, like maybe some of you didn't know your partner. You cannot know someone and see a strength even in a short conversation. So that can be where you lead from. You just want to remind people, you know, you got this. You have resources inside of you to solve this. At the very end, you can ask for my advice and I can help you because I did get into Harvard and that seems to be your goal. You know, I mean, that's okay. We don't want people to not get good advice, you know, or get good resources. But in doing this process with like your children, even your younger children or your college age children, if you have, you know, kids of all different ages, it just puts you in a position as a resource, as a trusted resource, not the advice machine that I'm going to ignore, you know, because that's what they do to us. You could be, they're like, I want to be a nuclear physicist. I am a nuclear physicist. They don't care, you know, it's like, you know, I mean, that can happen. I'm not saying your girls act that way, but, you know, that's just kind of it's part of our independence, you know, our independence journey is to reject experts and authority. And so this puts us in a position of, I'm just a resource. You know, take it or leave it. People that go really far lean into their resources, you know, and get the team of 50 versus a team of 1 to get something done, you know. So if you were coached, what was that like for you? To just be coached for 2 minutes with someone who had no training, just had the postcard?
It was great because they listened.
Right.
Which is, isn't that, you've got to have someone who listens.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk all you want, but.
We've surveyed probably between adults and youth who've gone through our programs, like at this point, like officially surveyed like 20,000 people. And the number one way people feel respected is when someone listens to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's free. You know, this is what I was talking about. It's free. You don't have to get into debt on your credit card to do it. You know, you just, and it's a quality of listening. And I've never met anyone who can't do it. And my aunt, I have even a deaf aunt who can do it. She can read lips and read signs. It's a quality of you feel like they get you in the way that they're listening. The listening is about you. They're not formulating their advice. Now I do. My advice machine's always going, and I have to tell myself there's this acronym, you can use it, called WAIT. Have you heard of this one? WAIT. It stands for Why Am I Talking? WAIT. And I do it all the time with my husband because he takes a minute to get over there and to get, you know, and I want to respect his process. And so I'll just be like, wait, like to myself. And then it'll come, you know, the answer or the response or whatever. So it's really, really helpful if you're, you know, your content machine is always going like mine is. It's a way to, you know, really just be about, I hope this person feels understood. And that's we'll teach tomorrow these things called the levels of listening. And that's the level 2 listening. It's like that person feels understood. Level 1 is I'm listening to myself, and we all have to do that. I mean, that's a self-protection thing, that's a judgment, stop at the red light, you know, you're listening to yourself, that's okay. But it's just when do you want to turn on the level 2 to be of service to someone else? So the other cool thing about listening, the more you do it deeper, like if your girl's having or your kid's having a struggle, it creates these nice deep pauses that their little light bulb has time to go on. And that's teaching them, you know, to be more resourceful. You know, that Google doesn't always have the answer. You know, the answer might be in here and here, you know, and gives them kind of that minute to hear themselves. Because they have a lot more white noise than we probably grew up with, you know. Just interference, AM radio all the time. They don't know what AM radio is, but you know we do. All right, so I know that we're at time. We normally switch, but I want to respect that you may have long drives or things to do. So would you like to just complete now and practice the coaching another time? Be the coach or be the client? Would that be okay? Sure. Okay. Well, and like they probably already did you already do it? No, we don't. Okay. All right. Well, I'll be here for the next few minutes if you have any questions, and if not, we'll complete there. And I have extra cards if you like. Nice to meet
Oh, great.
Yeah.